Hey folks, Eric from Another Voice with Jason and Eric, heard Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. on Spin FM 103.3 in Greenville, Greer, and Spartanburg, and on the web at canigetawordin.com, or you could go to iTunes and subscribe to our channel there, our podcast channel, Another Voice with Jason and Eric. Those are different ways you can check us out. And while you're on the web, visit pdoutfitter.com. They're your source for self-defense firearms, emergency preparedness and survival gear and supplies, and classes for responsible gun ownership, like the concealed weapon carry permit class and the combat focused shooting class. So visit pdoutfitter.com. Yesterday's video cast, I talked about Governor Haley's speech, and there's been lots of speeches at the Republican National Convention since then. I'm going to focus on two today, and they're kind of contrasting but some interesting similarities. That is the keynote address from Governor Christie, and then Representative Paul Ryan's nomination acceptance speech as the VP. They were both rousing speeches. I have to say that kind of the difference, but some of the differences to start out with is Christie's speech was rousing. It was full of great soaring ideas, a little bit on facts, which makes it easier on the fact checkers. They didn't have much to check facts with on his. Paul Ryan's was also soaring. The difference was Paul Ryan had a little more facts, accurate and inaccurate, but Christie's speech sounded like he was accepting the nomination for president. If you remove about 5 or 6 lines about Governor Romney, Paul Ryan's was the perfect speech that if you're the nominee for president, you want to hear. Because throughout the speech, he wove Mitt Romney's plan and what he wants to do to help the country throughout his speech. So there were some differences there. One of the things I found was interesting in Christie's speech, something that struck me, was he kept using we and us, but it wasn't defined who we and us are. I don't know if he meant just Republicans, just people there at the convention, if he meant Americans as a whole, because in part of his speech, he kind of set up a we do this, they do that. We believe this, they believe that. So maybe he's saying Republicans, I don't know. Some of the things I agreed with. There were some things about Americans that I agree that we do. But it sounded like he was saying that was Republicans do it and Democrats don't. I have a problem with that. Another thing about Governor Christie's speech is he talked about bipartisanship and criticized the Democrats for being divisive. Right around the time he spent a good number of time pointing out how we Republicans do this and feel this way and Democrats do this and feel that way. Now, to me, that's dividing the country into two camps. So who's being divisive? Honestly speaking, both sides are. You know that, I know that. But there's this idea that we're going to try to help each other. We're not going to be divisive, and we're going to blame the other side for being divisive. So Governor Christie, not so good on that. And the other thing was I found it interesting that Governor Christie could read the minds and motives of the Democrats and lump every Democrat into the same bad light and every Republican into the good light. And some of the things he said about we do these things don't fit with what happened these last 3 or 4 years when Republicans obstructed things. Not all the time, but there were times when Republicans talked about they're going to focus on jobs, 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 and didn't even present a jobs bill for months. And when a jobs bill was presented, they fought it. Now, I know there's difference of opinion and philosophy, but there was a problem there. So it was interesting to see Governor Christie's speech. Again, it was a rousing speech. It was a good, as I said yesterday of Governor Haley's, it was a good partisan speech. But there were some issues with it. But contrasting that with Representative Ryan's, his was very good too. And he had some facts in there. He had some ideas in there that were interesting. Unfortunately, some of the facts were not right. And I know politicians do this. I know they give information that's not quite true. It just, I don't understand how they can do that. Let me give you an example. Representative Ryan mentioned the closing of a plant, a GM plant in Janesville, Virginia, Wisconsin, his state, Wisconsin. And he talked about how candidate Obama had come to the plant and said something along the lines, if the government's there to support you, this plant will be there for hundreds of more years. And Representative Ryan pointed out, rightly so, that the plant is now closed. And he said the president didn't keep his promise. Now, lots of people have fact-checked this and discovered that the plant closed a month before President Obama was inaugurated. So regardless of whether the president made a promise or whether there was something said before, he had nothing to do with it closing. A little bit of a misinformation, but I want to go back to something else. This is what the president actually said, and I believe that if our government is there to support you and give you the assistance you need to retool and make this transition, the plant made SUVs looking at maybe making more energy efficient cars. You need to, that this plant will be here for another 100 years. Now, it's clear that the government wasn't there to help and retool. Now, whether you agree that the government should be there to help and retool is not the point. The point is the government wasn't there to do that, and the plant closed. So not only did he not make a promise, but he was right in what he said. So again, you got to watch some of these facts. You got to look at these details. I also get frustrated when I hear politicians criticize someone else's proposal when their same proposal does similar things. I'll give an example. The representative criticized President Obama of taking $716 billion from Medicare to fund Obamacare, gutting Medicare. Now, on the show we talked about that's not actually what's happening. They're not gutting Medicare. They're taking savings from the reduction of the future growth of Medicare. But here's the thing. If you're going to criticize that, you probably shouldn't have a plan that does something very similar, Representative Ryan. You can't say don't do this when you're proposing to do this, the same thing. I want to tell you about one other line. I want you to tell me something. Who do you think says this? If you're feeling left out or passed by, you have not failed. Your leaders have failed you. Does that sound like an Occupy Wall Street protester or MSNBC progressive talking head? It wasn't. It was in Paul Ryan's speech last night. If you're feeling left out or passed by, you've not failed. Your leaders have. Now, what I find interesting is it's okay to blame the leaders and not yourself when you're attacking the leaders that you disagree with. When the Occupy people blame the leaders in the Republican Party, oh, you should work harder, you should do better, you should be. And this is an interesting contrast to Chris Christie's speech, who talked about giving the hard truths and telling the difficult things to hear and being honest with the people. That statement was not. There's a lot about the Ryan speech, and we might get back into it later, but it was a good speech overall. It did exactly what the vice presidential candidate should do. It pushed Mitt Romney up. It elevated what that he said he would do. It was a soaring speech. It was really well received. But you've got to be honest and factual. You can't contradict yourself because your side is at the bat now. And so, friends, when you're watching these speeches, and next week, when you watch the speeches from the Democratic Party, because you're going to hear some of the same kinds of things. They're going to criticize the Republicans for things that they did before. It's going to go the same way. Understand what you're listening to and have a a critical ear. Fact check things. Just because you agree with the philosophy of a group, make sure what they're telling you is true. Because as we've seen in Representative Ryan's speech, he wasn't quite accurate in some things. But do it with all of them. All right, folks, that's all for today. We're going to critique Romney's speech tonight. He gives them tonight. We'll do that tomorrow. And we may have a few other things about the Republican National Convention as it wraps up. I think we'll try for next week with the Democratic National Convention. Now, we've got 1 day left in our campaign to raise money. We've reached our goal of $1,500. We're above that now by $85, and we want to raise as much as possible above that so that we can split it 50-50 with Pendleton Place Child Shelter here in Greenville. It's a wonderful place for abused and neglected children. We're going to split whatever we get above that $1,500 in half. I'd love to get at least $200. No, that's $115 more. So if you've got the opportunity, go to smallknot.com/anothervoice and make a donation there. All right, we'll be back with another video cast on the Republican National Convention in just a day. In the meantime, have a great night.